Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Goldeneye 64, or Goldeneye 007 as we all know it. I want to see if it still holds up as one of the best N64 games, and why you should consider revisiting it. But also be sure to stick around till the end of the video to get a preview for next week's episode. For now, let's take a trip back to 1997. Goldeneye is not only one of my favorite James Bond games, but also one of my favorite James Bond movies. This game has been around for over 25 years now and is still one of the most talked about games to this day. And it has also inspired many first-person shooters that we know and love as well. This game would release in 1997, a whole 2 years after the movie's release back in 1995. Now they thought it wouldn't do well because of the 2-year gap, but that did not stop it from selling like crazy. Here are some fun facts before we get into the video. The game started off as an on-rail shooter similar to House of the Dead or Virtua Cop. Did you also know that Nintendo asked Rare to make a game for Tomorrow Never Dies, but they passed on it in order to make their new IP, which would end up being Perfect Dark. And when you really think about it, it's kind of funny because Perfect Dark is essentially a James Bond movie/game. But did you also know that the multiplayer was a last-minute addition? I will definitely discuss more of that later on in the video, but for now, let's jump into some gameplay and see how it holds up today. Now, if I'm being completely honest here, the controls do not hold up too well these days, especially when you're going to compare it to something like Halo, which released a few years after this, and basically every first-person shooter now uses the same control setup as Halo or Call of Duty with the left stick to move, right stick to look. But with a bit of practice and refreshing your memory, the controls do come back to you. As for the gameplay itself though, these are still some of the best levels that I've ever played in a first-person shooter. There's just something about enabling unlimited ammo in all weapons that makes each level a blast to play, especially when enemies keep respawning just to get trampled by a tank. I mean, how much fun is that? Now, if you're not one for playing the game with cheats, be sure to keep an eye out for body armor, which will help you in some of the more intense situations. This was also one of the first games to feature different objectives depending on the difficulty level that you were playing as, and unlockables pertaining to the completion time for each level, which was something I had never seen in a game at that time. Now, with the rumors of a remaster popping up again, now is as good a time as any to jump back and revisit this game. What about the story though? How does that hold up today? The story does pretty much follow the same as the movie, except there's a few levels featuring Bond where he was not even in those areas during the movie, such as the bunker level and the surface levels. So it does go off script just a little bit. However, almost every line of dialogue is word for word from the movie, and Rare did a really good job paying attention to the detail of the movie and following the story shot for shot. It just makes me wish we'd gotten a Tomorrow Never Dies game from them. I get it, they were working on Perfect Dark, and it's not that I don't like the PS1 game, but I like to imagine what could have been with this game had they had the chance to make it. But let's go ahead and jump into the environment and see how that holds up today. As I mentioned in the story segment, the levels are pretty much shot for shot from the movie. Though I do have to go ahead and say that some of the graphics in this game have not aged very well, and some of the levels have not aged well either. It's mainly the character models that suffer the most when it comes to the graphics, because they can be very clunky, very blurry at times, and if they're too far away you can't really tell who's shooting at you or what is shooting at you. It's just hard to tell when they're really far away because there's no mini map to show you the enemies on screen. There was one in multiplayer, but there was not one featured in the single player portion of this game. And then some of the levels can just be very maze-like and very hard to figure out where to go next. So you kind of have to take a leap of faith and hope for the best so you don't fail an objective or accidentally kill an NPC, which would end up failing an objective anyways. But at the time, we thought this was the greatest game ever, and we thought these graphics were some of the best we had ever seen, but those were on tube TVs, CTR TVs back then. We didn't have HD TVs back then like we do now. So just keep that in mind, that when you go into this game, it will feel and play very much like a 90s game where you have to collect health, you have to basically go around in circles trying to find the exit to the level and just trying to finish each level with all your health intact. However, I don't want this to scare anyone off from this game. It is still very much fun to play these days, especially with friends, which I will get to in a moment. But for now, I would like to talk a little bit about the music and see how that holds up today, because this is some of the best music in an N64 game and any game from Rare that I have ever heard in my time as a gamer. The music has to be one of my favorite parts of this entire game. It uses a lot of the similar industrial sounds that were featured in other Rare games, such as the Fear Factory theme from Donkey Kong Country, the Disco Train theme from Donkey Kong Country 2, and the Killer Instinct arcade theme. Now, what do I mean by industrial? I mean the sound of the metal clanking together and just a bunch of things they found around a warehouse and just threw on the ground. It's similar to how they make sound effects for movies. And I feel like they did that with this and just kind of put it into music and just started hitting things around the house, basically making music. I like that they did that because it's some of the coolest music I've heard in games, and Rare games are some of the best that did that. Now, I think Goldeneye was probably one of the last ones to feature that, because after that, they started going a little kid-friendly with the music, a little goofy sounding with like Donkey Kong 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Banjo-Kazooie, and even Perfect Dark. They didn't have that same sound effect that they used in these games. And I want to say that Rare took inspiration from the Goldeneye movie for the soundtrack, because when you watch Goldeneye, there's certain parts that the music sounds almost identical to how it does in this game. And it also had that futuristic techno-y sound at certain times in the Goldeneye movie. And it was kind of going with the 90s of, you know, evolution of Bond music and stuff like that. So I like that they added the sound from the movie into the game. And it just makes going through and playing this game even more fun. And it's just that thing that brings me back to my childhood and how much I enjoyed this game as a kid. And I love playing this game just for the soundtrack alone and the gameplay as well. Now, I know I mentioned it before, but let's talk about some of the inspirations that this game has had on gaming itself. Now, this game has inspired so many different things, and I'm going to break them all down one by one. First off, I want to talk about the multiplayer. Now, this was a last-minute addition, completely added by accident, and the developers were just messing around doing some last-minute tweaks and decided, what the heck, let's add it in here with the single player, because originally the game was only supposed to have single-player mode only. But had it not been for the multiplayer in this game, who knows if games like Call of Duty or Halo would have even had multiplayer, because those developers saw that people were still playing Goldeneye and decided to add their own version of multiplayer into their game and go from there. Those games all have team deathmatch, capture the flag, seek and destroy, you name it, they've got it pretty much. Whereas Goldeneye was just 1 versus 1 and then a 4-player battle royal basically. And I know Perfect Dark added some more modes as well, where they had a little bit of the capture the flag and the team deathmatch and stuff like that. But Goldeneye set the standard for those games. And not just multiplayer, but also games themselves. It set the DNA for games like Perfect Dark and Time Splitters 2. And when you really think about it, if you've played Time Splitters 2, then you know that that game shares a lot of the same combat and gameplay style as Goldeneye and Perfect Dark. It even has the left side with the health bar, the right side for the armor bar, where you have to pick up body armor, and it's the same thing as those two games, where each difficulty level has different objectives and even some bonus objectives in there that you have to get. And if you fail one of those, then you fail the mission, basically, same as Goldeneye and Perfect Dark. So it's really cool that this game has inspired so many different things. And even Medal of Honor, yes, I know, completely different studio, different development team, but director Steven Spielberg was watching his son play Goldeneye one day, and he got the inspiration for Medal of Honor from watching that. And if you've ever played Medal of Honor, then you know that it has some cheat codes in it, and one of those cheat codes is a paintball mode. And it's funny because Goldeneye had the paintball mode too. So I like that that development team saw this and added a lot of the stuff that was in Goldeneye into their very own game. And like I said, so many games today have been using that same formula, and they're still using that same formula today. Now, I know I had some pros and cons in this video, but I still think everyone should go back and play this game and check it out for themselves. I would even say give the remake a chance. If you still have a 360, PS3, or a Wii, definitely check it out, but just know that it has been delisted, at least on the 360 and PS3. I'm pretty sure the Wii also. So you would have to basically search for a physical copy, and that can be hit or miss sometimes. I managed to find one, but it's very hard now to find one, especially for a decent price from what I've seen. But if you find one out in the wild, definitely pick it up and check it out. The remake was not that bad. I really enjoyed it. It basically was an updated version. And then if the rumors of the remaster are true, check it out. I would even say if the remaster is true, play that version over the N64 version, because it's likely going to have better controls. And like I said, my only gripe about the original is that the controls are so poor these days, and it takes a little getting used to, because there's no addition of a right stick to look around, whereas you can move around with the left stick, but you can't look with the right stick. You have to use the C buttons, and it's kind of difficult getting that going on. And those are the reasons as to why I think you should revisit Goldeneye 64 or play it for the first time if you haven't already, especially with those rumors of the remake coming out soon. But I want to know what some of your favorite moments are from this game, or who your favorite character is to play as in multiplayer. Let me know down in the comments below. I would also like to thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. I always enjoy making these videos because it gives me a chance to revisit the past and introduce these older games to a newer audience, and bring back some of the memories to those fans who used to play these games back in the 90s and early 2000s. But as always guys, be sure to share this video with your friends and family, ring that bell to be notified of when videos go live, and I will catch y'all next time. But for now, let's get a sneak peek in next week's episode.